Hello, BookTube. I bid you welcome. Today, May 26th, is a birthday. Now, a birthday of a sort, I should say. It is Dracula's birthday. Dracula was born May 26th, 1897. That is, Bram Stoker's novel Dracula was published by Archibald Constable in its iconic yellow cloth with blood red lettering. Yellow cloth at the time was sort of signified decadent books from France. There was a publication called Yellow Jacket that came out. There was a periodical at the time, uh, and yeah, it was associated with decadent books, not to be sort of confused with the Yellowbacks, which started up in the second half of the 19th century in railways, cheap editions, cheap paperback editions of books and sensational literature as well. They were in competition with penny dreadfuls. Those are something a little different, but it fits in to the whole idea of Dracula as well. Even though probably Dracula didn't quite, match up to the decadent aspect of the Victorian fin de siècle at the time, but the publisher, I'm sure, was trying to cash in on that kind of um, thoughts, and people would grab it off the shelf for that, and think that it was something they were getting something very decadent, which in a way it is, but that's a different topic. Um, but I'll be talking more about Dracula with Brandy at the Book Collectic tomorrow. We will be doing our sort of wrap up of Maypire, and that's going to be at 6 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US. And just keep an eye on my feed, and you'll see whatever local time it is for you. And we'll talk about our reading of Dracula and other vampire books. Mostly, it was Dracula for this month for me, and I went through a lot of the annotated editions of Dracula, which I found absolutely fascinating, and I will be talking about that. But also, the one thing that did want to talk about that I thought was quite interesting. I'll be talking more about this tomorrow, but I wanted to add it with here is this book called The Drafts. It's hard to see. Drafts of Dracula, edited and annotated by Robert 18 Bissing and Elizabeth Miller, with a foreword by Dacre Stoker, who is the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker. This was published in 2019, which is sort of an updated version of their notes for Dracula that came out a few years, about a decade before, I suppose. Um, Now, the notes or the annotations that they're referring to in this was or is housed and owned by the Rosenbach Library. It was sold originally with a lot of his effects in 1912 after his death, and eventually showed up at the Rosenbach Library. There's a bit of a history of these notes through there, and the notes are it's like anything that he sort of was. When he had a thought, if he had a little scrap of piece of paper, he wrote down stuff. So obviously it's not going to be everything, but there's a lot of the material here, and a lot of it is dated as well. And they have sort of, thoughts on characters, characterization, locales, names of characters, all that kind of material. But also, he'll go back through and cross something out and then add something in. And and then we see the first time Dracula sort of appears as the name of the vampire, and he writes it several times as if he's testing out how it looks. um, and it's fascinating to see the evolution of this through these notes. And there's also research material where he went to the British Museum or library, well, the British Library, as well as the public library in Whitby, where potentially he first saw the name Dracula and liked that name for his character, but also the London Library, which is in St. James Square in London, in Piccadilly. Now, the London Library is a subscription library. It is not funded by public funds. It is solely funded by its members. It has 1 million volumes. Now, he used this library quite extensively because for a time he lived in Piccadilly as well. So he took notes of a number of books and for research, background research on folklore, on language, on the travelogue of the customs and the culture of Romania and Transylvania. He wrote all this stuff down, and then when the book came out, Notes of Dracula, one of the librarians at the London Library was looking through this book, and it was known that he did use the London Library. So the librarian decided to go and pull a few books off the shelf that is noted that he used. So, and then he turned to the pages where the notes say, that this quote or this information is from, and he finds, and some of them, Margellania in the book that turns out to be Bram Stoker's handwriting. And, they started pulling off more books that are on the list that he used. But also, too, I'm sure they've got a list of books that he took out, so there's even probably more than what's in here. But anyway, they found all sorts of things. They found where, there may not be any writing or Margellania in the book, but the corners were dog-eared and increased, and those match they match the page numbers of where he's taking these notes from. So it's really interesting. They don't have all the books, and also some of the books have been replaced, so they've disappeared, and some and they've been replaced, but some of them actually have disappeared. So they don't have everything, but I think they're still, or at the time of the publication in 2019, they were still, looking at things. And the library itself was first, it was started in 1841 by Thomas Carlyle, and it currently holds over 1 million books. But there's a list in this book here of the books that Bram Stoker consulted, and there's one that really I found very interesting. It's by F.K. Robinson, A Glossary of Words Used in the Neighborhood of Whitby, English Dialect Society. They state here 1976, but that's a typo because it's 1884 or 74 or something like that. I forget. I looked it up. It's 2 volumes. But anyway, the notation here is a newspaper clipping headed, quote, Mr. Irving in America, unquote, which apparently was used as a makeshift bookmark, and it's annotated, and there's handwritten on it, Daily News, September 19th. And that is in Stoker's hand, in Bram Stoker's handwriting. So this clipping has been sitting in this book since about 1890, and it's still there. And I found that fascinating. And it just goes through all the other books. And like it says, our only copy is a replacement copy that came into the library in 1914. So there's times where they don't have the original copy that Bram Stoker would have consulted. But do join myself and Brandy from the Booklectic tomorrow at 6 p.m. on my channel for a live where we'll do a bit of a wrap up of Maypire and talk about Dracula and sort of uh, the stuff that I found interesting and we both found interesting in our reading of Dracula, but also of all the annotated editions that I've gone through. So I didn't just reread Dracula. I went kind of deep into and overboard into annotations, annotated editions, and other material. But do join us. Thank you, BookTube.